Yo, what's up, everybody? This is JH, and welcome to Chop It Up Show, whatever episode it is. I'm here with my boy, Julian Mitchell. Yo, what's good, brother?
My God, what's going on? And we here in Harlem, for real.
We're in Harlem, man. We've been talking about doing this for a while.
Yeah.
So just to set context off, just right from the jump.
Yep.
Because I'm sure that we have overlapping audience, but there's also a chunk who has read a lot of your. So for me, it's the funny thing is that before I met you, you were just a cat that I heard rumblings about. You know, it's like, yo, Julian, like, you know what I'm saying? I'm not sure. I wasn't sure what you look like or whatever, but
I have a mystique about it.
There was a mystique about it.
Right.
And because of, you know, the way you write and what you write about, it influences the culture. And so it took a little bit of my just leveling up my game to get to the point where I could, attract a mind like yours, and then we could just vibe and kick it to, which is where we are now. So just give the audience a little bit of context on maybe, I'm actually just genuinely curious, roots, and then how you got into what you're doing and what you're doing now.
Yeah. To make the long story short, my roots, I was born in Seattle, Washington, raised there, raised by my grandmother. As a kid, I was raised without both of my parents. And as a kid, a lot of imagination, a lot of very early on, understanding just the power of my thoughts and developing a sense of just independence and things like that, which ended up being huge to what I do and just who I am now. That's why I give that for context. So did that till my grandmother passed away at 11, moved to Las Vegas, which is where I was raised. I like to say that's where I was raised because that was really my formative years.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Like teen years?
Yeah, teen years, literally 11 years old. So I was fifth grade, Went there to live with my mother. My mother got incarcerated. She did a lot of time. So when that happened, it was figuring out life. After that point, it was, I was young. My brother was like 14, and we just had to figure it out, him and I. And then we had my sister, but she went with her stepdad. So there was a lot of that period of time where it wasn't about dreams. It wasn't about nothing. It was about figuring out life, survival. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And that was all happening in Vegas.
In Vegas.
In blistering heat, which I'm sure adds to the whole
It was
thing.
Crazy. It's hot. The 120 degrees in the summertime is crazy.
Yeah, I feel you.
So there was a lot of evolution in that period. Going from nothing, being homeless, being in that situation to putting myself up for adoption. I was 14.
Wow.
Got emancipated myself, joined a family. When that happened, I was 14 years old, like I said. So that was me saying, okay, I had to get out of the situation that I was in. It was that real.
Right.
And this is my one window to create the life that I saw when I was a little kid in my grandmother's house.
Like a window of time.
I just said, this is the window. You know what I'm saying? This is the chance to create the life that I want and see, for myself. And if I'm going to do it, I have to sprint, I have to go do it. You know what I'm saying? So in that period, went from not going to school to doing everything in high school. And that kind of got me into so many different things, writing for the paper and throwing events and dancing for the different, dancing in talent shows and starting a dance group and playing football, running track, all these different things. I just
the total other end of the spectrum.
Oh my God. I was in every group. I say that to say I really got to a point where I became incredibly comfortable with myself and the diversity of who I was and being in all the different groups, because I moved around so much that I was with the cats in the neighborhood. I was with the geeks. I was with the athletes. I was with the pretty girls. I was with everybody. And me being myself, it always created this sense of community, right? So I understood culture and community kind of very early on because I recognized that all the different things I was interested in and into, we had a shared connection, all these groups, because I could be in these spaces and add value to all these different spaces, and I didn't have to change who I was. So I kind of recognized that early on.
And so early on, you were also writing. Sounds like you picked that up early as well.
Yeah, well, I got into writing initially. I had a teacher who was a journalism teacher my freshman year of high school. And when I came in as a freshman, he was pretty much the first week of class, we had a little writing assignment, and he was like, "You're a genius." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, you're a genius. I'm going to make you the editor of the paper." Now,
he put you on.
I'm a ninth grader at high school, not thinking about no kind of paper. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they had an open house, right? Like, cause you're coming to school, and we come to school, and you got to go into the different classrooms. And so, my fam goes into the class. Everybody's in the class. You know, you do it like by period. And he tells the whole class, he's like, "Julian is a genius. I'm gonna make him the editor of the paper." Shout out to Mr. Fick, wherever he is somewhere. Wow, right? Fick. So he basically made me the editor as a freshman off the whim and was like, you got to cover everything that's happening at the school. So
that would go on to change your whole trajectory, man.
Well, it did, but it kind of put it in a space where writing as a focal point for me would always pop up and show itself before I eventually like jumped and fell and then eventually like jumped all the way into it. You know what I'm saying? High school, I did that, but then I did everything else. So it wasn't a focus for me. Gotcha. I always knew I could write and had a voice, but it wasn't. Fast forward, graduate high school, get a scholarship to Occidental, go to Occidental College in Los Angeles. And the first, again, the same way Mr. Fick was in high school, I come in wanting to be a politics major. I wanted a double major. I wanted to be in econ and international politics, right? And I had this whole elaborate plan for how I wanted to change the world through international politics, right? And so you have to meet with your advisor to pick your classes. So I go in when school starts. I think I'm the man because I got to figure it out. I go in, I'm like, yo, here's my plan to take over the world. Here's what I'm coming to Occidental to do. Here's how it lays out. And I had this whole plan, and I was passionate, and he stopped me. He was like, Julian, I have no doubt that you could accomplish all of those things you just said. So I'm like, yeah. He's like, but you know what? He's like, you have ideas. And he's like, the way your mind works, the way you process information, the way you think about things, if you can master the ability to communicate all of those thoughts and communicate all those things to anybody across any medium, there's nothing you can't conquer in your life. That's literally what he told me. And at the time, I was like, what does that even mean? It kind of hit me. And at the same time, the chair of the English department walked by his door. At the same time he said that, walked by him. And he was like, hey, Dan, come here. Meet Julian. He walks in. And he's like, Julian wanted to do politics, but I think Julian should be an English major. I'm going to put Julian in your class. And so he's like, I got an opening in my class this afternoon. Went to his class. He was reading Ralph Waldo Emerson, told the craziest story I ever heard. My mind blew. Yep. And I was like, oh, wow, this is literature.
Right.
Like, wow, this is crazy. Like, where a sentence could mean 5 different things in context, and like being able, that's where I fell in love with my style I have now. That's part of it. Like being able to take people on a journey where they can see what you're thinking through your writing. Right. It's almost like if people came into your mind and were able to visualize it, like that started out early on. So then I went back, was like, yo, you're right. Became an English major. And then when I did that, it was a mix because Oxy didn't have a journalism or a communications program. It was English and comparative lit. So I was reading pre-1800 literature, slave narrative. I was reading contemporary lit. I was reading all this different stuff while taking new media theory, journalism, like all of this, writing 4 or 5 papers a week just for my classes, like long form papers. And so I had a Professor Foreman, who beat the writing out of me. Like, she's the one that, you know, you had that family member, that person that's like, they make movies about it. That teacher that just rides you. That's like, yo, you're great. You could, you know, take it a step further. You could be one of the most prolific minds of your generation. You could do.
Wow, you had some good. You know, it's interesting because there was an absence of figures, role model figures that you had early. And like there was also a decided kind of shift all the way over to the other spectrum of like participation, really at the essence of it. And in that window of time, your genuine way of being and thinking attracted, it seems like, people who took in a special interest in like further developing you. and you were a receptive seed to that. And,
yeah.
You know, and so you were able to just like chapter after chapter from Fick to, you know, this guy who put you onto writing because he felt provoked enough.
Roger Boucher, rest in peace to Roger Boucher.
So I find that fascinating, that, you know, that's a thing in your trajectory thus far.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's happened at different phases. Like Roger Boucher is the same dude who got Obama into politics. Right, same person, same one who got him to be a politics major at Occidental, like got him to do his first speech. Wow. Like this guy's known for that. There's always been different people. The person who got me in the game was a similar person. This is somebody who, when I was in college,
Greenberg, Zach.
Who? No.
Oh yeah.
I'll fast forward to that. How I got to that, but this person in particular was like, when I was in college hustling, I was interning. I was the event director of the college. I was editing, writing at the paper. I was running the radio station. I was doing all this crazy stuff while still going to school every day, still doing everything. So when he saw me moving like that and playing football in college, when he saw me moving like that, he was like, yo, you got the tools. Like, you got the things people can't teach, and you got like the hustle. I didn't really know what he did, right? He was like, but you got the tools, man. He was an alumni, and he was a coach. And he was like, whatever you need, like, but you need to keep doing that. You need to keep doing what you're doing. Like, there's people who make a lot of money doing what you do. Like, keep doing that. So when I would throw concerts and stuff, he was in the business. So I would, like, book shows at other schools, throw big concerts, and he would take me to the labels, and I would, like, book the artists, or, like, when we would do different things. He was, like, my right hand. When I wanted to make a play, I made the play, went to him, was like, yo, let's make the play. Boom.
He was younger or older?
He's older.
Okay.
And then when I got out of college, he was the one that eventually came back around. I was like, yo, all that stuff you was doing in college, you still do that? And I was like, yeah. He's like, we should make that a company. And I was like, what do you mean? I didn't really know what he meant. And that became my entry point into the game for real. That agency became Quantasy, which was the digital agency that went from a company called Arc Media Solutions that he had into a full-on digital agency at the time, where the ad business was going into a content business. And
what year was that?
This was like
06?
2000. No, at this time it was like the kind of like the height of blogging and all that. It's like 2010.
Okay.
Yeah, 2010. And so he got me into that, but he was somebody who at different points was very instrumental and saw something in me and believed in me and pushed me. Because I feel like I myself have always had this incredible like drive and passion and conviction in myself and like sense of self, and always been unafraid to like not just be myself, but you know, go through the path of evolving and discovering more about myself and challenging myself and things like that. And I feel like I was never afraid to go after what I wanted, even in my life. And I feel like people gravitated to feeling that spirit in me and seeing it and watching it, you know what I'm saying, and being like, oh, okay.
There are people that help,
you know what I'm saying?
help nurture you.
They saw it
over time.
Yeah.
And so that digital agency, did you get in? You started doing content production, and was at the intersection of music, I guess. Is that how that crossed over?
It was everything. Like we were talking about convergence back then, like 2010. We were talking about a lot of that different stuff. So it was a combination of where it sat at the intersection of, part of why it was named Quantasy, as we sat at the intersection of media, marketing, technology, and culture, right? Like and we were thinking like quantum metrics, just different things, right?
Gotcha.
So it was like we sit at this intersection and we were selling people campaign. We were working with brands, teaching them about culture, teaching them about the way it was changing, teaching them about the changing media landscape, teaching them really back then about how the ad business was going to become the new entertainment business and how content was going to be this new thing, and they needed to have native platforms, and social media can't be an afterthought, and you need to have your own editorial, and you need to have content marketing. We was talking about this way back then, and I was in charge of ideating those things, selling those things through, and then building them, right?
So you got it in the floor of like content marketing.
Oh yeah.
I remember when that was really popular, and you would kind of see there was like a lot of Google AdWords for that, and that's when Google listings also was a lot more popular. Like it was a destination that you would kind of go to for, for search. But search has really evolved because so much of the information that we used to seek out on Google is now on social. Yeah. And so anyway, Google used to be its own different animal, and I remember SEM and SEO.
And it's so funny that you say that. Google was one of the clients we got, and I had wrote the positioning and the strategy and the whole breakdown for Google AdWords.
Wow.
And Accelerate by Google and the small business toolkit and all the audience segmentation and all the everything.
Oh shit.
That's why I still have my Google shirt to this day.
That's fire.
But because that was happening at that time, because this is a time too where people hadn't, we talking about content marketing, people still didn't believe in social media. This was still that time.
I remember.
You know what I'm saying?
When people were like, hey, you don't actually sell anything on Facebook, so it's important to have a page, but you really want to be email marketing.
You remember when that's what they used to teach people? Just have a page. You know what I'm saying? That's what they used to say. You can't be a brand if you don't have a page. They didn't care about nothing else. What you put on the page, you just got to have one. And I remember at that time,
that's
part of
base level. That's like social media 1.0.
Oh my God. And I'm sorry. I don't mean to even cut you off. I'm getting hyped.
No,
because it just makes me think about it. Like, I remember, like, one of the selling points when I used to go in with CMOs and stuff like that, one of my selling points used to be when I used to get them to create a platform, like when we would go in to sell one, I used to be like, you at least want people to Google you and find something. Like there has to be something in the middle, right? Like you have to have some platform that is not your website, that when people look you up, it's like the lightning rod on the internet, like the thing that's there. And I was like, that thing needs to tell your story. So now however you want that to look, there needs to be a platform that tells your story, because people are looking for you on Google to hear your story as a company. So like there needs to be some barrier there that they find, right? And so
that brings me back, man. That I haven't really even explored that, territory mentally, because it's not like it's been long enough where I can, truly reminisce about this shit like in the 90s when I was growing up. But it's still far enough away from where we are today and how much shit has changed in that time that, I don't know. It's just really interesting because I haven't even thought to observe about, the evolution. So you were on the ground floor with all of this as it was happening. And how did that shape the understanding, of like how you approached everything from then on?
I saw it as exactly the manifestation of what my advisor was telling me in college. It became
Mr. Fick.
That's Roger Bochet, right?
Bochet.
When he said, if you can master the ability to translate your thoughts and ideas across any medium, right, then you can conquer anything, and there's no industry you can't be in. That's what that became. The ad business at that time became a blank canvas, and it was like you have all these platforms, and it's about mastering the ability to develop a message, develop a platform, like an actual platform, and then be able to break that up and translate it into all these other platforms across all these other mediums, so that this one story can be, like when we say you find something, can show up anywhere and point back to like one central idea.
That's the mastery.
Yeah,
that's the mastery. And it's interesting to me too that the way that you so the art of the actual storytelling on the respective medium is something that for me has taken years to like understand. It's like when you first started blogging, how were you sounding? Like the voice then compared to like where you are now, I'm sure has, evolved massively.
My ability to communicate has evolved. Like the writing is translating your thought process on paper, right?
Right.
At its core, essentially. So you are walking someone through your thought process, right? When I got to the style of writing that I have, that's inspired by hip hop. That's inspired by just music in general. My writing has a cadence. It has a rhythm. It has a lot of alliteration. It has a lot of like different ways about it, like nuances about it, that are very specific to what shapes my thinking. That's why that happens like that. You know what I'm saying? But it's all about your style, right? And like the storytelling of it. But
I want to re-explore this before we move on from it. So that early era of like 2011, 2012, I guess, even from 2010 to even 2013, like back when you were saying, hey, just have a page on Facebook, right? Like that was like
my trick was just have a page. And then when they get a page, I'd be like, I'm gonna run the page. And then I'd run the page and I would build it all the way up. Or I would get it to a place where I would be like, give me the page, and I would run the Facebook page, run the Twitter, and write the editorial, and produce the videos, and write the scripts, and we do the spots and shoot the spots. And then it would get big, like it would blow up, and then they'd be like, yo, we need to make this part of our business. And so that was like my template. I would get them to make the page and act like, oh, we just made the page.
Right. And then you become a full service agency.
Then I take it over. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I actually had no idea about a lot of your background personally.
Yeah.
It's very profound, and it makes a lot of sense for the quality of introspection that you provoke in your writing.
Right.
And also had no idea about the whole agency side of your business.
Started out in advertising.
You know what I'm saying? Because and that's an interesting thing about, our footprint, the way it looks in the digital world, like whatever it is that we put out there enforces that perception. Yeah. And also depending on where you meet someone in their life, you know them from that point onward.
Well, for me, it's interesting too, because number one, being in so many different industries, like at the same time, you have that fragmentation where people know you for said industry. Most people at this point, my journey starts at Revolt. That's where for a lot of people, like, that story starts. They're like, oh, you started Revolt. And it's like, that's usually where for our peers, that conversation kind of starts, like,
right.
Because advertising and everything that happened before that was what got me to working with Puff.
And I'm glad we have a forum. We have a space here where we can go back in time.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that's something that you don't talk about as often, all that,
Which one?
Kind of just origin story and all that kind of stuff. Because to your point, like people will say, hey, so you started, we're now talking about like from, Harlem Capital on, or depending where you met me.
Literally, yeah.
But there's a whole lot of other stuff. So how did you get to doing Revolt? We don't have to break it down in that much detail because I also want to look forward. So you were doing the agency.
And I'm talking too much, so I'm going to keep it
short. No. This is great. This is what it's for. But you were doing agency. You came across,
and that's why you can chop it up, like like stir fry. Okay. Yeah.
So how was Revolt thing? Like I had forgotten about how that went.
Wow, man. So I was working at the agency at this time. I'm like the digital director, running content and really like leading a lot of the creative and the content and all of that. And at that time, I had done, campaigns and content with the Google, Wells Fargo, Honda, like Magic Johnson and all these different people. And I was somebody who was ahead of a lot of these things. Like I said, like really doing full on stuff and seeing the results of it and understanding the landscape very, very well and having the skills to like execute these things. And so I was known in those spaces as somebody who was changing the way people did business, but I wasn't public face, like it wasn't social media tell people what you did.
You were in industry,
but it was known, like some people kind of knew like this dude is doing his thing. And I remember I got a LinkedIn message and it was from a guy who was advising him at the time. And he was like, yo, do you know who Sean Combs is? I was like, yeah, I know who Sean Combs is. And now, mind you, in college, I was doing all the stuff, watching the videos, never sleep, not going to sleep, hustling all the time, whatever. So then fast forward, I'm like, yeah, I know who that is. And he's like, he just got this deal. And I remember I just read like the press release that he got the network. And they were like, yeah, you know, he has this new network and he's interested in meeting you. And I was like, word. He's like, are you interested? I was like, yeah, I'm interested. And so fast forward, when that happens, it happens the same week. Like he was like, he wanted to meet me that same week. So I met with the team that he had, like Andy Schoen, the co-founders and all of them. Cause this is before offices, buildings, all of that.
Yeah.
So I meet with them, have a conversation with them. They're like, yeah, you know, we feel really confident. Like, you get it. I had stayed up when I knew I was meeting him. I stayed up and made this whole presentation about social media best practices and like what I thought the voice of the channel would be already, because in the conversation, they kept hinting at certain things. And I was like, if they're hinting at it this much, this is what he wants to talk about. So I'm going to go get this done. And then sure enough, we had that meeting. I drive up to his crib because I had to meet him at his house early in the morning.
This in LA?
In LA.
Okay.
And I drive to his crib, just me, and go in the house. And when I go in the house, I just hear him like yelling. I hear his voice, like in typical fashion or whatever, I guess you would say. But I go down the stairs and he got like whiteboards and stuff. Like he got whiteboards, his computer is open, like stuff like that. So he's really like getting busy, like brainstorming this stuff out. And I remember the short story of that was I come down, there's really nobody in the crib. Like he's in casual, like chill morning clothes and stuff like that. And we literally go through the whole thing. He's like, yo, this is why I got a network. This is what I want this to be. This is for the next generation. What do you think a revolution is? What do you think this should be? How do you think this should work? Like, what are you watching? Show me what you looking at. Show me.
Right.
And then that turned into a whole conversation about culture and about that, and then about storytelling and about what the vision would be. And then it got to the specifics of that. And I was like, ding, I'll show you exactly what this all looks like. And I pull out the presentation I spent the night making, right? And I say that to say it literally was like perfect timing, because we got on the topics that were very important to him, which happened to be the ones that I make this whole thing about. So then I take him through this whole thing. Then he starts showing me these crazy like videos and like speeches and things like that. And it turned into a couple hours of us just building, you know what I'm saying? And then I knew, I was like, yo, this is everything that I am, like what we're talking about. And then, you know, I remember he was like, yo, you an alien. He's like, yo, some people who's humans. Like, yo, you an alien. And he was like, you know, I need somebody I could trust. I need somebody who's young, who's of the culture. Like, this is something that's very important to me. So for you to, you know, run it, we got to make history. It's going to be a thing.
Wow. That's
and
awesome,
I was like, man, I got it. And then I remember leaving his house after all of that. And I felt incredibly calm, you know what I'm saying? And just confident. I wasn't nervous or anything. I felt good. And as I leave, he calls me and I get a phone call and the job was mine then. And then from there, I was going to South by Southwest. So while I'm in South by, I get the offer letter, but I'm still working at my other job. And I have loyalty to them, so I have to handle that. So then once I handle that and I take the job, he's like, I need you in New York. So I was like, all right, when? Like today. And so that turned into me starting the job, getting on a plane, coming to New York for what was supposed to be a week. And he's like, you know, this is my baby. I need like all that stuff we talked about. Like, I need to see it. I need to know how you think. I need to know how you lead. I need to know how you manage, who you trying to hire. What's the website going to look like? What's the mission statement? What's the philosophy? Every leader has a philosophy. What's this? What's that? What's this?
Damn, he's asking good questions.
That week turned into a month and like a half, I want to say, of being in New York. I was staying at like different hotels and stuff.
Wintertime?
Having meetings. It wasn't wintertime.
Because that would have made it worse.
Yeah, it was bad. But having meetings and stuff, meetings in cars, meetings at his crib, meetings in the office when nobody's there, in cubicles, staying up all night, doing all this kind of stuff, having meetings in the conference rooms to the point where I got all that stuff together and presented it to him. So it was like, here's the first 500 tweets. Here's the value system. Here's the mission statement, positioning statement. Here's what it looks like, feels like. Here's this, here's that. And laid the whole like brand out. Here's how you should hire. Here's org charts. Here's this, here's that. laid it out for him. And then he was like, yo, like, I can trust you. I'm comfortable. And then I remember he was like, yeah, I feel good about this. Like, you can go back to LA. And at this time I'm ready to go. I'm like, yo, I've been here too long. And I remember like getting off the train at 59th Street the next morning. And when I get off the train, I get this email, and he was like, you know, is there anything else you need from me? I see the email, get a phone call. He's like, yo, you know, I appreciate all your hard work, everything you did. Like, I feel good. I feel comfortable. And, you know, he was like, is there anything else you need from me? And in short, my answer was just like, yo, I just need you to, you know that I got this. Like, trust me and know that I could do this. And then, you know, he felt confident, and then he pressed the button and was like, all right, we ready to rock. And then jumped in, started out as social media director. We launched digital first. And so rolled out that DNA. And then we ran that and did our thing and built the platform that way. And it was like a team of us. It was like me, Ramon, Chris Roy, Bessadonna, Video Chris, Jason. It was like a small team of us that were doing all the content. So it reminded me of the agency days, right? Yeah. Like, we're running all the social and doing the editorial, and I'm doing the interviews with Ramon. We're doing them side by side, shooting all the videos. We're at every festival, everywhere. So all the stuff that Revolt was in the beginning, when people felt like we was everywhere, was the work of like 5 people.
Wow, that's
and
great.
Then ran social media, and then jumped over and started writing the big stories and doing those types of things, and then found my voice in that, became editorial director. So I was running editorial and social, and then the rest of Revolt was history. So that was like how it started, to like That's the awesome. Quick evolution of it.
Yeah, I also didn't know that in-depth kind of little thing.
I learned a lot from that guy.
That's awesome, man. That is awesome.
Yeah.
You built in a genuine way with one of the greats of the game.
Yeah, legend.
You know, that's a cool moment in time to have shared, and now that Revolt is, you know, as big as it is, or as culturally relevant as it is, it's cool that, you know, you played a role in that.
Yeah, there was a time, we had a conversation not too long ago, where like we were sitting down, and he was expressing like genuine like just respect and acknowledging like, yo, the growth and the evolution and where it was, and like my role that I was talking about back then, like that I was gonna play and where I was gonna be and what I was working for, like being in that space. And that was dope, like having that moment of being in that space young, feeling like I had to prove it to myself, and I was in, you know, being challenged to build this thing and do this thing, to feeling like I've reached this evolved space of really knowing my power and my platform and how I want to do it, and having this ability to build platforms and do things from the experience that I learned. And I feel like that shows, and I appreciated that moment a lot.
So because of that, all of that we, you know, that we've covered, from origin to development to like how that played out in the market, and the way it played out was interesting because that was happening in parallel as like these new mediums were, you know, have been gobbling the world. And so it's kind of been an interesting time. It's an interesting intersectionality because it allows you to like, you know, amplify that development and that, you know, expression and what have you. So I'm curious, like, where do you see the game where it's at now with respects to like, I don't know, give me a macro overview, like, as you see it right now, like, what are the biggest opportunities that you're seeing, that you're thinking about, that you're like, yo, how come no one's, you know, seeing this, you know, or is there a thing like that right now that you're thinking of?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I think about. Number one, I wrote a story, I can't remember when, it was probably like a year and a half ago. And I remember the segment though of talking about how brands are treating creators with such respect and deference in a way, I guess.
Where they're getting out the way.
And it's to the point where they're giving out the equivalent of single deals, album deals, and full-on joint venture deals, right? Mm-hmm. And so many people are going for the first two, right?
Single
being
no
like, yo,
ventures.
We can just do something. You know what I'm saying? That's dope.
Yeah.
Or like, you can book me to do something, or I can be in a space because of what I do. Then the second one is like, okay, we can do like a short project or something, roll something out as an album, put an album out, put your name on it, you know, and then the brand gets some executive producer credit. We can do that. Right. Put the album out. But then the opportunity is in the last one.
The joint venture.
There's not a lot of people going in and really leveraging to have a stake in something. Mm-hmm. And it's there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's a space where you can't passively step into it. Like you would know this, like I agree. The relationships you have, mm-hmm. you got to have a vision. You got to step in and say, if I'm going to do a joint venture, I'm going to have this kind of partnership, even if it's not a straight up joint venture, right? You got to have a vision of what we're going to do. Cause now you're playing business, right? Like now you're at the table talking, this ain't a partnership. We talking about.
It has totally changed. And that's one thing that understanding your agency background helps me appreciate. Like, I feel like we both have a savvy of business that we're bringing to this media mm-hmm. space. And like just charting, I'm new in this entertainment and media world directly. Like I've been flirting with it for a long time, but I was really, my backbone was, my first business was that laundry business, and then I was focused on running this incubator, and then I had a chance to do some investments. But right around kind of the latter end of that, I started doing that in parallel with little, media mm-hmm. things like hosting a podcast here for, eBay or doing some talks. But now in my current chapter where I'm now, getting ready to host this show for their network, that was my, I would say, real kind of deep dive into the entertainment industry and observing how it is that big, incumbents in spaces, or even not incumbents, but the way that talent is treated when you're coming up by default, you're facing unfriendly, agreements. By default, you're facing a lot of things that's not set up for talent to win.
Right. Not at all.
And if you have, you can succumb to that. It's easier to be like, okay, cool. Like, cause you're honored at the opportunity of what you're about to go do. But when you have the savvy that I think you and I have, you look at it in that way where you're like, I know I'm talent. I know your distribution, but still because of, my viewpoint, distinct, whatever, like, that you're the heart of the value.
You are not, your power is not measured by how many opportunities you can get. Your power is measured by what you have the ability to turn down. Okay. And what you can really be in a space to recognize. You have so much power that doesn't make sense for you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That like, they got to do it right. Like they got to come correct.
Exactly.
To rock with you. Like, and you can
not,
say no.
Not, but you have to have the,
you know
exactly.
What I'm saying? But you feel completely like, I won't feel any less than if this doesn't work. I won't feel, as a matter of fact, it'll show me that the value truly lives with me. And you realize how much of that you allow people to borrow equity off of, thinking that you're winning because you are exercising so much leverage. But that's not to get opportunity. But again, attracting the opportunity will have you blinded to believe that is that's what the manifestation of your power looks like, is just attracting opportunity.
Right.
And that's not it's like, if you fly at a certain point and you got certain standards, having certain types of women doesn't excite you as much as it becomes a standard for you. Right. So you're not going to keep celebrating yourself like, yo, I keep getting all these women who got jobs and they smart and they funny and they drive this car and they do this. If that's what you're into, whatever you're into, it's like the same thing. Like at a certain point, your standards have to elevate, and your standards only elevate as a reflection of how you see yourself. You know what I'm saying? And you have to start seeing yourself. When you talk about the opportunity, when you see yourself, this is going to be the second opportunity. You see yourself as what you really are and the power you really have.
Okay.
Yes, you could walk in and negotiate or put certain situations together that are in your favor, that are way beyond just like a one-off deal or this and that, or you know what I'm saying, or them throwing you something that you like, that ain't really what I want to do. I'm gonna show you what I want to do. You can go in and be like, I'm gonna show you what this could be. That's one thing. But when you really see yourself, you understand that the reason you're attracting all this opportunity is because you have the value that they need to win. Right. So when you really recognize that, then you're like, I really am, when you get paid for your value, not your time, I'm deciding to give you this value, right? To make you win, however you win, right? So literally, I'm helping you win. That's what that becomes, because it's not like, hey, let's do business. They're like, we need the sauce, and we ain't got it. John got it, and we can't settle for less than the sauce because John's the only one with that sauce. No, like for real, he's the only one with that. Right. And that's when you realize how unique and set apart an individual you are, which ultimately translates into how powerful, how important, and how necessary you are to the game. And when you understand that, no, I'm saying when you really understand that, that whole perspective changes. And then that leads to the second opportunity, which is when you find yourself in that space, you got to be building the new things, creating the next things in the spaces that are evolving, right? Like, there's no new media platforms emerging. Somebody tell me why. I'm not saying like blog level things, as in no respect to blogs, but saying
you're talking like Viacom of the future or something like.
Right. We're moving into a lifestyle era. It went from culture, let's connect to culture being fragmented and decentralized to all these subcultures and microcultures. The culture of you. Every individual has their own look, sound, language, lifestyle that's reflected in their own music, clothes, everything. Individual to you. You wear your story every day, and you're your own distributor. All your platforms, you're your own distribution channel. What does HBO do when John Henry's reach as one channel across social is bigger than all of HBO's reach? Right. What do they do? Right. And whether you have that reach or have a vision that's worthy of reaching that many people, it's building a lifestyle brand or platform that is fueled by content that reflects an area, instead of creating all of these content companies and trying to make them cool and make them mean something. It's like, we need, as a culture, people who are building things, who have a unique perspective on life, that live their life in a unique way and have unique stories to tell, that are building platforms that reflect these lifestyles and go across the board, so we can start to see. Does anyone come to mind that you think is doing that right now? Anyone that you're watching kind of from afar, that you're like, yeah, I like this approach. I think that person's doing it right. No. Really? And that's part of why I feel like, no. Like, there's something I'm working on right now that I feel really good about. To that point. Like, it was seeing an opportunity of saying this doesn't exist. And I know you're kind of being self about it. Let's go in partnership and do this. But that was part of the reason why, right? Like, you could look at, because again, I'm not saying the legacy ones, right? Like, take them off the table. Take every GQ, Fader, Rolling Stone, anything you think about in that realm. Let's talk about ones in the last 5 years. How many do you know?
Some of the newer media companies, in my opinion, right now that I'm looking to. I like what Refinery 2029 is doing. I think that they've figured out the culture of like resonating deeply with women. I know that there's still things on the top level, because once you're $100 million revenue company, then the roadmap is to $1 billion. How do you get there? Right. So I think Refinery is interesting. I think Vice is interesting. Vice is started as a magazine.
But you wouldn't put Vice in the legacy category?
Not legacy. No,
you called them new? You call Vice new?
I call Vice new. Here's why, right?
Okay.
Like they came out as Vice magazine in the 90s, and they were that. But taking a punk rock magazine from a fucking magazine that's in circulation to a multi-billion-dollar, kind of media conglomerate is very fascinating, and a lot of that happened in the last like 5-6 years, bro. A lot.
I agree.
Other than the brand identity, has been matured over time. But, now they have a network, Viceland, they have news, they have a show on HBO. And I think that they resonate deeply with millennials.
Okay, I'm going to reframe the question.
Okay, shoot.
Our peers, as in our demographic and age group.
Got it.
Okay. Who have launched a platform in the last 5 years.
Got it.
That has had an impact and introduced lifestyle in a way that has moved the culture forward.
Okay, I hear you. I gotta throw Blavity in that category.
Absolutely.
They've made waves. Afrotech is becoming more and more culturally important every year, and they've been intentional about kind of becoming kind of an umbrella company. They've had acquisitions. They've launched their own media properties. So I think Blavity's doing a good job.
Yeah, I would give respect to Blavity. I would say that.
Yeah.
To me, it's like Blavity deserves that respect. So shout out to Morgan. Shout out to everybody in the Blavity sphere. Jonathan.
Aaron.
Aaron for sure, who's like the stealth guy who makes things happen. But and that's funny too, because with Morgan, the first conversation we had was a Google Hangout of me telling her how Blavity should move from tech company to content company because they needed a content marketing platform in the middle.
Oh, you were in the middle of your sales pitch back in the day.
No. Because my boy Benoni, shout out to Benoni, I believe, had introduced us and said that, like, yo, I think they're trying to build the brand. It was about building the brand. And it was like, all right, well, if it's this kind of brand, it should have content and it should have this vertical. And she had a blog. It had a couple blogs on it, which is first how Blavity kind of started as a blog.
Yep.
And that evolved, and she took it, and she had a Silicon Valley like background. She worked at these different data tech companies and stuff, and she was smart, and she created a blueprint to do it. And I remember writing some of the stories in the beginning and doing stuff like that. Cool. And all of that. But I just remember, to our point earlier of talking about that way back then, like the content marketing piece. Yeah. But I think she's done a great job.
She's done a great job. Who else? Is there anyone
else?
But
I'm like, who else outside of that? Because even she started at like 3-4 years ago. So she fits in that realm.
She fits in that realm. So we have Blav. I'm kind of scratching my head for another one. Like, I like what the CCNY is doing, with culture.
Absolutely.
That came in the last 2 years. I think
Imani's
something about the way where Imani is in her development and she's a beast. Matching the culture. Yeah, I mean, culture content exploded to the point that it has in 2 years is absolutely bananas. And always love for Driven Society.
Yes.
So,
but you would call them media companies?
No, I think that they have an opportunity.
Absolutely.
I think that they have an opportunity to go media, and I think that they should
agree.
invest very heavily in that.
Yes. That would be very smart. To our point of opportunity, that would be very smart.
I agree. So, but yeah, other than those cats, I can't think of anyone else at the moment.
And think about where our culture is at right now.
Exactly, and how pivotal.
That's what I'm saying. When you talk about opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yo, but you tweeted, or you posted on the gram, or tweeted and then reposted that like the top 10 rappers made $400 million last year. And yeah, it's a fraction of the value that we're producing. So you see the opportunity now.
That's in music too.
Of like in media, creating kind of that, one of the companies that has the potential to be legacy company.
Yeah, because I feel like this goes back to the point of recognizing we're in a time where you're seeing industrialization happen in different spaces, right? Where people on the outside looking in think industries are a lot more along and figured out than they actually are, right? Mm-hmm, streaming is not figured out.
Right.
The industrialization of streaming is happening, and we're seeing headlines every day. Everybody's trying to figure that out, right? There's certain spaces that people haven't all the way figured out. at the same time, to the point of recognizing where we're at and what we see, it's saying we're the people that we looked up to. Like the same people you look at Shane who built Vice, or all these people, Rob and John building the Fader, Mark Echo Complex, whatever. Like they did that already for years, you know, and like we're in the positions in our era to build the things that reflect our era because we're the ones in those positions. You know what I'm saying?
I've talked about this in every episode this week so far, this whole idea. And I think we chopped it up about this when we were having breakfast a couple weeks ago. Like this whole idea of like, yo, it's really about our peers. And like, you know, instead of looking up and out, like, and having respect for those cats that have been there, done that in every lane, but like is our time. So we can, you know, let's do some shit, you know, is my kind of vibe now. Like, yo, let's build some stuff.
It's like you're looking up to Jay now, right? Like people are still looking like I'm aspiring to that. And it's like Jay literally, and you know, we share an affinity for Jay-Z as a life coach and business mentor.
Oh,
so Jay-Z built Rock Nation
right
as
a
joint venture with a touring company, right? Bought his masters back, had the rights to Rockefeller. Instead of going to any music group or anybody when they were declining, he noticed that the industry was going to be about what? Shows. Merchandise shows, revenue way back then. So he does a joint venture with Live Nation. They cut him a $500 million check every year, and it says Rock Nation. Rockefeller, Live Nation. Rock Nation, joint venture, genius. Buys the streaming company, becomes the only one to own a streaming service. You see, we talk about the industrialization of streaming. He's right at the forefront because now about ownership and all of that, where these big companies don't have the type of like leverage or mobility that he has being like the company that he has. There's certain moves he can make. There's certain things he can do that will put him ahead in the long run. And just the fact that he had it first.
Right.
Set a certain tone. But it's like, we're the ones who've been looking up to him. Like he did that and he's still doing this.
Right.
So when you're seeing that, at what point to what we're talking about do you stop looking up and start saying he's really made these moves?
Right.
So what am I going to do with that?
Right. Exactly.
What am I going to do with this information? Like how am I going to, he puts this album out that tells you the stuff he's still dealing with, which basically is saying too, like, when you say financial freedom, my only hope is like
fuck realizing rich and dying broke.
Realizing that like even he, as rich as he is nowhere near what the perception of his wealth even gets to, because he's seen the other side of that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's like
he's creeping on $1 billion though, man.
He is.
He's creeping on $1 billion.
And I think Jeff Bezos is creeping on 200 of them.
That's true, but you know, but there's only 100 cats. So if we zoom out on just on the macro, like just, you know, to get to being $1 billion, like that's extraordinary in that, you know, a sliver of a sliver of a sliver of people, you know, gets that concentration. But I feel you that like he's there and he's peeping like the value that he brings, and he's like coaching us through the music, like, yo, you know, there's a lot more.
I'm curious of your thought on this.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like, you know, put Oprah aside, put I think his name's Robert Smith, the other billionaire, right? Put him aside, put Byron Allen aside. I think he's a billionaire now too, Byron Allen, or has $1 billion in assets or something like that.
And Mike, what about Jordan?
Jordan,
quiet billionaire.
Quiet billionaire. Yeah. People always gonna buy sneakers. Put them to the side, but say, why have we not seen any other billionaires in our culture?
I think that the answer to me is painfully clear, and that is like the lack of good structure of business deals, the lack of ownership, really. Because like when you're talking about, you know, having the knack, like Quincy Jones, whom I just saw his documentary on,
which was amazing.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was awesome. You know, for him to have discovered Mike and you know, produce and write for Count Basie and Ellington and like
Sinatra.
I'm a jazz aficionado, so I didn't even know he was, you know, doing this with all these cats back in the day. So, but for him to have provided to serve that deep of a role in culture, and you know, his network, he's very wealthy. He's got $400 million, which is, you know, quite a sum. But you would think, you know, him doing it in partnership with Michael, that he would have been a billionaire.
Right.
And I think a lot of that just comes down to like, you know, owning the companies that cuts the deals, not just going for the deal. So that's my assessment of it.
Yeah.
Who and you know.
So
I'm sure we're in agreement,
scenario,
right?
Yeah, we're in complete agreement.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of it. But I think the reason I asked that and brought up the earlier point is, you see Jay-Z owning things, right, and telling you, like, sending you a smoke signal that's like, I'm making these moves because financial freedom is my only hope, and I'm trying to show you that I've reached the pinnacle of this culture, and this is where I've landed. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to show you that this is a great starting point, but don't celebrate too much. Do better. Do more, right?
I'm trying to give you $1 million a game for like $9.99,
right? So I think when you hear that, when you really pay attention, the same guy who gave you the blueprint to get in the room, when you look at that and then you think of what we're talking about, think of another Jay-Z line. Y'all still signing deals for real.
After you know, all they done stole for real. After what they done all over in hell.
Okay.
Y'all niggas supposed to.
So then let's use that as a footnote to QC. Coach K and Pierre, right? Amazing what they've built. Amazing what they've done.
Who are we talking about?
Quality Control. So that's Coach K and Pierre are like partners in Quality Control. That's Migos, Lil Yachty, Cardi B.
Got you.
All of them, right?
Wow,
QC, Lil Baby, all them. That's their label. Wow. QC the label.
Okay, got you.
They're huge right now. Biggest artists on the planet, right? In this era, and I don't think they're doing anything wrong. We're talking about opportunity. In this era, why wouldn't QC be the universal? You got all of these people on your roster. You got more hit artists on your roster than the biggest labels got, period. Than one single label got. Right. Why not be the building that you walk into? Right. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Why not? Yep. Dude, it's not like you couldn't do it. That's like Wayne was the closest, but he still had his company under Universal and Cash Money. That's how he did that deal. But when you looked at Young Money, that was like an imprint that when you saw it on the outside, you're like, oh, it's Wayne, and he got Nicki and Woo. It moved kind of like this independent thing, but it was still under the label. It's but companies like movements like QC, to me in this era, should aspire to be the label instead of doing $100 million joint ventures. That's great, but why not, as you would know, right, in the investment world, you could go treat this like a real company that could be $1 billion company, and instead of saying, yo, we got to get as much money as we can because we don't know when this fire is going to run out, go get equity, go get venture capital if you want to do that, so you can keep your thing moving but own the building. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Instead of walking into Universal or walking into Warner Music Group or walking into Capitol, like, and I feel like those are the things, to your point of like the ownership and the way it's done. I look at it like media, it's like that. You're like, yo, where are we at with that? Yep. Music is like that. Like that number was insanely low. Like the 10 of them combined, 400 Come million. On. You hear Drake in everything that happens right now. So there's that. And I think it happens just across the board with us right now in different industries. I think it's like really seeing the true opportunity in our ability to be independent and still enterprise and be profitable and make certain moves.
So let's speak some things into existence then.
Yes.
On the given all of these things, right, which are thought provoking, a lot to digest there. Like that gets me thinking like, all right, you know, I'll take a stab. Like some things that I want to do. So having broke into TV now, and getting the opportunity to sign to a larger.
Congratulations.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Dope.
I appreciate that. Signing to a larger agency actually has broadened my scope a little bit. And even just this process, I'm understanding the layouts. Like in this world, there's film gets the top budget. You know, feature films are the biggest budget kinds of things. Then there's scripted TV, which is like billions power.
Right.
Unscripted, and then digital at the moment. And I wouldn't be surprised if digital slowly undertakes, you know, some of those and makes its way up. But as of right now, that's the hierarchy. And so, you know, you creep in how you can, which, you know, for me was really digital, actually. Having a presence on digital gave me the visibility to attract the opportunity to, you know, take on the next slice of that. That gave me the opportunity. But now I'm starting to think about like, okay, I want to produce things. Like after enough time here in this world, I want to, you know, because being talent on camera is one thing, but you're not getting the kinds of things that we were just talking about. You know what I'm saying? You're not getting, you know, producer credits. You know, you're not getting a lot of that stuff. And it's fine that it's that way because you're stepping into a situation where you're the disproportionate beneficiary of a lot of this stuff because you're the face of it. Right. And so by default, you know, your face is going to have a lot of impressions on someone else's spend. So to me, it made all the sense in the world to step into that role and learn it, but always with the mindset of I'm looking for my, you know, Rock Nation. Like it was clear to me why Hove moved in the way he did. Yes. Because if you have the kind of savvy that we have when you step into the world, you immediately start looking at things a little bit differently. So I'm speaking that into existence. I want to produce some shows where I'm not, you know, even there. But I like the way
you're speaking it into existence. You take the one out of it. You're like, I'm producing some
shows. I'm producing some shows that is going to have a role in culture. And I'm not looking to be public facing on it. I just want to be involved in the production of it. Absolutely. The storytelling component, what it evokes in an audience when they see it and so forth. And, you know, be a beneficiary of that. And I think slowly over time, you know, I can move into some multi-book deals. I can move into, you know, a deal where I'm working with select brands to a certain capacity that gives me the firepower to then, you know, I really like having the fund component to this. So having Harlem Capital as a vessel is really important, and can be leveraged in a really dynamic way if we go about it the right way, right? Because you know what I'm saying, we did what we had to do to attract other people's money, and now we have an LP base that we're investing on their behalf with a specific mandate. So it's not like we can stretch too broadly, but that experience of how you do that, how that's done, you know, we're looking to invest in the next wave, right? And so if on one end on my media stuff, I'm like fanning a lot of that and being responsible for contributing to, you know, to the culture in some way, right? It's really cool to also have the other piece as well, where we can invest in the same ideas that we feel we have the opportunity to amplify. Yes, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know how that plays out, but that's kind of where I'm at, this little space.
It's your own version of being vertically integrated, where you own the chain of commerce from production to consumption and fun. So you basically you use the media to build the platform to have the thing, the entity. You have the fund that can always make sure it's owned, like self-owned. Yep. You can fund it and make it happen. Then you have the other platforms and ability of you also being who you are in front and behind to pivot that and evolve it into things that you still essentially own. Because when you create your shows or because your personality, you have your merchandise, your book, your this or that, like and then you create your distribution company because you can do that. So you distribute your books yourself, and so that's like your way of being completely vertically, you know, integrated.
And you know, ultimately I'm stoked that I have the insight and wherewithal and network now to like execute on this plan for the next 2-3 years and really put that in place. But at some point it becomes bigger than that, and it becomes like, all right, cool, I have this infrastructure now in place and these learnings. Like, what can we do with that? What can we meaningfully bring into the world with that? And that's kind of like where I'm setting my sights. And I'm comfortable, and I know it's gonna take 10 years. I feel like 6 to 10 years of being in varying phases of this stage to get to that next point where I'm like, this was all for this, and now I see it.
And I'm in the same place. It's like every step for me has been since actually seeing it, like the way you describe it, right? Mm-hmm. Like seeing it, the moves and the calculated steps and the things you move and curate what you do and how you do it, and building the company, like founding your company, mm-hmm. doing your deals differently, being very specific about the types of partnerships you do and how you do them and how you own your rights to things, moving through different industries, like being in the brand building industry and what that taught me, to being in media, to mm-hmm. to doing all these different things. You do it because you're playing the long game.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? You get wins along the way. Like you having your show, you doing these things, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. But for you, that's a building block to the long, like Ho say, I'm playing forever, not the white space, right? Like, so then that makes my goal about the truth. Mm. So if that's the case, it's about living your truth and living your path and carrying that out, which is the thing that I also feel like gets taken for granted. We hear it all the time, you know, people see the end result, not the process, or they don't appreciate the process. And it's like, you got to appreciate the process, trust the timing of your life, because when you have that big of a vision and it's that important, that valuable, you got to commit, because there's a lot of other things you probably could do mm-hmm. along the way mm-hmm. to have it easier, to do more, whatever, be in a better position. But you got to continue to grow and evolve and push yourself and invest in yourself and tweak your business plan and perfect it and go through the losses and the failures and take chances and have new conversations and new spaces with new people. And that always washes out. You know what I'm saying? It always transitions out until you get to that space. And when you get there, you'll have the same story as all the other billionaires who got to where you got. Right. It took me time to get here, you know what I'm saying? Right. Instead of like, I could just go get this money, or I could do this way, or I could jump on the wave now.
There was actually a point that I remember when I was like, because earlier on I still have an incredible sense of urgency, but for some reason in my grind, I've always felt like it needs to happen, you know, really soon. And there's like, it's good to have that forward impulse, but I've noticed that oftentimes it could also be fear-based, you know, for me anyway. Like I'm acting out of this, like, all right, it needs to happen. And then when I looked a little bit deeper, it's like, I'm feeling like it needs to happen because I'm afraid that it's not going to happen at all. And so there's a fear-based element. And, you know, so anyway, I zoom out.
I want to say how real that is, because I'd probably say in the last like 6 months, is when I got over that. It wasn't like, I don't think it's going to happen, but it was more of like, if I know this and I see it and I want it and I'm doing the work to get it, it needs to happen. And it needs to happen like this, the way that it's going. And so I'm subconsciously it's almost like out of fear of messing it up. Mm-hmm. You start to be like, you know, it's almost like, I gotta be focused, I gotta be on, I gotta be here and now, I can't get distracted, I can't do this. And that becomes that kind of like pressure and force that you feel, that's like, I can't not do this. And that messes with
it. Ironically, it's like a big twist.
And I just recently got to a point of not feeling rushed. Like feeling no pressure, nobody's timeline, nobody's nothing.
Your comment earlier evoked that feeling. Like I realized that there was a rushed quality, and it creeps on me from time to time. And then when I hear a statement like, hey, you know, if you focus on the truth, right? Like it eliminates that. It kind of, you know, it lifts that from you like a veil. And that realization, it happens in levels. There's levels to it. You and I know.
Yes.
Right. But the first time it hit me was after realizing like, it takes like several steps in your development for you to look back far enough and be like, oh, that happened. Now I understand why that happened, or why that was key to my development.
Absolutely.
You know, because my love of music when I was originally a jazz musician, well before anyone has known me as business person, like jazz was my life. Like I played 8 hours a day religiously, listened to all these.
See, that's something I had no idea.
Yeah, man, I love.
See, that's why you live in Harlem.
That's why, and before I moved to the city, because we're from here, from uptown, but we like how you grew up in Vegas. We grew up in Florida in a certain time. And, I started by playing, first Reagan. I had big locks, by the way, and all this other kind of stuff. But at some point when I fell in love with jazz, I was daydreaming, losing sleep every night, just thinking about coming back to the city. And I would listen to these old records. And I was reading the autobiography of Malcolm X at that time. So I had images of Detroit Red. And I just knew that I wanted to come here and be of the spirit of whatever, Harlem was when I got there. But yeah, so it's funny because when my love of music kind of evolved into what became, entrepreneurship, which I think there's a lot of similar elements. Before I figured out that it was from jazz to starting companies, there was a period where I felt like I was letting myself down. Like, man, this has been my life. I lied to myself and tried to pretend like I was into it when I was picking up the instrument, but the love was no longer there. And it took me a while to like, when people when you introduce yourself, you say, oh, what do? You say whatever you're wearing at that time. And for a long time, beyond when I stopped playing, I would say, hey, I'm a jazz musician. And at some point it felt untrue to say it out loud. And I was like, I was lost. And much later when I'm making vlogs and I get to choose the music that I, do, and now understanding that I'm in culture, right?
Yep.
And I'm saying I'm gonna have a platform. I can move horizontally and produce music. I studied music. I know music theory. Like I can, I can tell progressions and write melodies and shit like that. And now I understand that with that music, I could write the original score, or at least bring on someone to help spearhead that project and have equity in it. That's gonna write the original score for the show that I, want to produce. You know what I'm saying? So it took me several steps for me to understand, everything we do in every stage of our life is like is a little ingredient that we could use going forward.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like Absolutely. That type of shit pumps me up.
That's the thing. Like it's when you're realizing that the evolution that you're just going through in your life shapes all the things you create and all the work that you do, then everything is part of the process, and you got to let the process happen. You got to let the plays develop. So if you know that you're going to do what you need to do, then why are you rushing the process? Because you're going to get to where you want to go. You know how this formula works. You know the process of manifestation. You
right.
know how this thing works. You have faith. You can believe. You know the ebbs and flows of life. You know everything ain't sweet. Like, you know how this goes. So it's like
Word.
When you realize, like, yo, why am I forcing a process that's gonna happen anyway?
Right.
There's no logical like sense to that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And you don't even, in my case, I didn't even realize I was forcing it until like hitting a roadblock. And that formula didn't work. The formula that I had, that I've been using to get to this place of like having a vision, seeing it, like being still, resting to kind of see the blueprint, the game plan, going in, doing the work, execute the game plan, put the work in, look up. I'm where I saw myself when I had the vision. All right, boom, here's the next one, boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
And then hitting a wall in that where I saw things a certain way at this time, you know, because everything kind of been happening in a sequence. Oh yeah, I'm gonna do this now, and it happened. I'm gonna do this now. Oh, in this period. Oh, and this is happening. I'm making this move.
Right. That's
and you see it manifest.
Where I've been. Yeah.
Yeah, and you kind of develop a rhythm in that, right? And so
you begin to feel like you can manifest anything. You're like, all right, cool. This is where I'm gonna go. This is where I'm gonna go.
Because you can.
Right.
But you realize that it's all happening. It's not, even when you think it's happening on your time, it's not. And so for me, hitting this space where I was forced to step back and realize that, okay, these formulas work when you're in alignment with the universe. When you're in alignment with God, you have this superpower to manifest anything. When you're doing what you need to do, You stay committed to that. The universe agrees with it, gives you the favor to execute it, the favor and the grace. Boom, it happens. And when you hit this space, after knowing that formula, it's not saying, oh, it's not going to happen. Like, you know how you may be rushing and be like, yo, I'm scared this ain't going to happen. You may hit that wall and hit it so hard that it's like, oh, is this, I don't even know if this is going to happen. Or see that as a moment to say, all things work together for the greater good. And if that's a part of the process too, then this is literally just saying, hey, it's not this door this time.
Right.
It's this door.
Right.
Same outcome, same thing on the other side of the door. But if I let you just go through this door, you would think the same, do the same, have the same flow. So you got to go to this door, because what you going to learn between getting from this door to this door is what you're going to need to be equipped once you walk through the door and go to the next thing. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, when you see those things, you understand, like, you start to look at the things that may be perceivably slowing you down,
right,
or taking a little bit longer than they need to,
right,
as the play is developing. You got to let the play develop, like football, right? You can't run plays and not let it develop. You might outrun your lineman and get tackled before you get the ball. Like, you got to let.
You can't throw the ball as soon as you get it, like, to the end zone, right?
You got to know how God designs your plays. You know what I'm saying? And let those plays develop, and trust your quarterback, and trust, like, the people that are put around you and the energy that's put around you, and know that you're a winner in life. Like, you may take losses, but in the end you win. You carry the trophy at the end when the clock runs out. So when you have that mentality, it allows you to slow down and your process to slow down, allow the game to come to you, and you start to let things develop, and you still end up with the goal you wanted when you stepped on the court. You know what I'm saying?
This has been the deepest episode of Chop It Up, man. It's interesting for me because you bring on people, and, like, you know, because the show is malleable and amenable, you know, we go wherever, you know, the vibe takes us. And, you know, I knew it was going to be introspective, but we've covered some, like, interesting spaces, you know. And we've gone from everything from, like, riffing on content marketing back in 2011.
Oh my God.
To roots upbringing, to there was an interesting chunk in there as well around dissecting, like, what you felt was next. Oh, we did
different
Revolt,
opportunities. Yeah,
different opportunities.
The funny thing is, even this is almost an interesting segue, because me stepping into Forbes, the charge that I had stepping into there, being the first cultural writer they had online too. Cool. Like, the first stepping into that was like, okay, if this voice isn't represented and this space isn't represented, and there isn't anything on this platform that really translates the relationship between culture and commerce, then I have to be that, like, step in and translate that relationship to the point of doing the three things we've talked about. Number one, how do you show the value of what we do on both sides? So how can I get other creators, artists, innovators, entrepreneurs, builders, thinkers to see the real tangible value in what they're doing, how it's changing industries, how it's generating money, how it's doing these leverage and things? It's like, yo, how can we smarten each other up and do it in a way where it's literally the facts is packaged, but I can use the language and the coding that we use to put it in a way where you're going to get it.
Right.
But then also do it in a way where the other side gets it. Like the CEO, CMO, head of this, investor here, ooh, they read it too. You know what I'm saying? They're going to come in, they're going to be like, wow, we didn't think of it that way. We didn't know about that.
Right.
Translating value on both sides. The second part was how industries are changing. Like, really being able to also show both sides. This is how this landscape is changing. This is how this is changing. These are the things you need to look at. When this happens, this is what this really means to the space.
Right.
To also move those things forward and show those trends and show that. And then lastly was, like, to create a platform that put real culture creators and change makers and legends and people who are influential and important on a platform like that, and tell their stories and why they matter, so that they have to be literally seen in the same space as a Warren Buffett, as a so-and-so. When you see their picture on a profile, when you see people show up in their headline, you are reading it in the same scroll as the world's greatest business leaders. You know what I'm saying? And that symbolism, that representation means something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like those three things to me were like, okay, when it comes to seeing opportunity and creating spaces and understanding value and using my voice and my platform, all those things went into what that has become. And I think me staying behind that, to your point of kind of the mystique around it, was always like your body of work is the best marketing tool, right? Like it's about putting that first, because then you become the genius as opposed to, you know, putting genius out. Like they'll look at you and be like, yeah, that's the person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then that becomes that. I would rather, because that's going to come. Like, it doesn't stop anything I'm doing. My thing is happening. So knowing that, it's just like, and so putting people on a platform, you know.
Where can people find you now? Where are you contributing most regularly through your Forbes column, which is you have something called Corner Office, which is with Beats, I believe. So the breakdown, I still have my Forbes column. So you can go to Forbes.com and find my site. You can type me in. So I still have my Forbes column covering entrepreneurs, startups, disrupting industries. Have my series with Beats by Dre. We have a partnership for the series called Corner Office. It's on a platform called Stories. I'm getting ready for the second season of that. We did the whole first. Nice.
Also, thank you.
That was a sick deal.
And then Bel Air, we're kicking off the second season of Self-Made. So I've had that series over the past year. So Self-Made Tastes Better. It's a bunch of artists who tell their self-made stories, how they got to where they are. And so we're rolling out season 2. I'll also be the first creator who is a self-made like ambassador of the brand, like somebody who represents self-made for the creative community. Right. So going into that, we're gonna have a whole like second season. So you can find that on YouTube. You can find the episodes, Bel Air, luckbelair.com. You'll be able to find that. And
word.
Yeah,
yo, I'm gonna dope stuff. I'm gonna have such a fun time in 20 years from now, looking back at this.
Oh yeah,
right? Because it's gonna be really fascinating for me to see how our journeys kind of progress and overlap, and what we decide to collab on. Because I know it'll just be a matter of time. Absolutely. Actually, yeah. In fact, we'll be looking at the same clip 10 years from now and be like, "Yo, shit, we called it then."
It happened.
So yeah, man. Yo, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Likewise, man. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was.
I hope it wasn't too deep. I feel like we were supposed to like stay on the career track. Like this.
Nah. And you know what's funny is like just while we're rolling, like everyone thinks that. Yeah. You know, like Trav and Natalia from Driven Society, they rolled in here last night, and he was like, "Yo," he was like, "Yo, I thought we was gonna do a business thing, but there was, you know, there was wine. There was the whole vibe. We listened to J. Cole and stuff. I had Alex Wolf before then. We're just going back and forth, just bickering. She's a beast. Yeah, she's fun.
I love Alex. Yeah,
I did my boy Daniel Got Hits, who's like this freestyle soccer player, like, you know, with crazy hair and like, you know, does funny videos. Like I've had all kinds of people here, and we just riff, man. And
that's dope.
You know, it's funny because hearing that so many times this week actually is confronting to me in a way, because everyone, it feels like people generally have that perception of like, okay, we're gonna talk specifically business. And I feel pretty holistic as a person, like pretty multifaceted, and it gets me to understand like, wow, I'm kind of only putting that out, right? So there's a lot of room to storytell, you know, horizontally, you know, in many ways.
Yeah, like if I didn't, and I didn't think about that coming into it, I just naturally think when I do stuff like this, people want to know about the business side of things, like the hustle and stuff like that. That's just usually what it comes out. Yeah. But I would say to that, knowing you is actually knowing you and how you think. It's a different context when I step into the conversation.
Word.
If other people saw it, like I do think they would understand like how well-rounded you are, right? I think they get glimpses of it in you coaching or teaching. Like they see the authenticity, they see the genuine like care, passion, stuff like that. And you're just smart. They see those things.
Yeah.
And like pieces. But if it is something where you feel like your goal is to show people a more holistic side, I think people would appreciate the other sides. Like, even some of the things you talked about, jazz and the music.
Sure.
Like that. Yeah. Like, you know what I'm saying?
My dude.
My guy. For sure. See, I just don't show people shit. So you don't get what I want you to see.
I'm gonna have one of the rare Julian Mitchell interviews on the web. Yo, you guys check out my man Julian Mitch. All things Mitch. Catch him on Corner Office. Catch him on Forbes. That column is fire. He's covering everyone from Joe Budden to all these cats,
Swiss, Kendrick, everybody.
Some things we didn't cover is so this came up in breakfast, but you wrote back in the day a review of To Pimp a Butterfly, which was what kind of got you into Forbes. So like even all that, you know, has been contributions to the game and the culture, and you know we appreciate your contribution, man. And
I appreciate that.
It's been great to have you on.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
That's a wrap.